Hello, my name is Miranda Hagerman, and today I'm going to be presenting my senior practicum project, creation of a retention committee. Now let me ask you guys something. How often do you kind of come into work and you're dragging, or you've had a rough shift the day before and you just didn't have the motivation, didn't have the want to? How many of you throughout your shift, midday, you've already had your patients yelling at you, your family members are, being difficult, as some of them do, or you can't seem to stay on task, your medications are late or your assessment's late, or how many of you at the end of the shift when you get home you just sit down and think, wow, that was a really rough one and it's really hard to stay positive? Well, I know I have, especially recently. I had struggled with a little bit of I want to say burnout maybe, and I was kind of talking to some of my coworkers and they were feeling a little bit of the same way. So that's kind of what started my idea for this project. I knew we were going to have to do the senior practicum project on something we were passionate about and wanted to change, and that's one of the most prominent things that were on my mind at the moment. So I'm going to get right into it. Creating a retention committee. First, I had to pick a goal and objective for this project. My goal was to improve nursing retention of the medical surgical unit on which I work. The objective of this project was to create a retention committee as an extension of the already existing RBC Committee, or Relationship-Based Care Committee, and organize one morale boosting activity for the nursing staff on the medical surgical floor at Comanche County Memorial Hospital, which is where I work. I work on 2 South, which is a med-surg unit. And then we would follow up with additional activities, depending on how well this one went. The identification of the problem, I told you that I had asked around, and I was feeling some of these feelings of, lack of positivity, low morale. And I'd also noticed that a lot of the nurses on the unit, or some of the nurses on the unit, were, starting to leave, that I had worked with the past year and a half that I have been employed at the hospital. And when I was asking, they, left for various reasons, but when I was asking why, they just said some of them couldn't do it anymore. Just, the day-to-day activities were really draining them and getting them down. One of the biggest restraining forces is something that was kind of going against you during this process, something that would prevent your project or hinder your project in moving forward. Some of those restraining forces were money, of course. We all, money doesn't fall off trees, as some people might think. Organizing a retention committee, some of the members, had to come in and clock in on their days off to come to the meetings. It was something that had to go through management, of course. Organizing events. Some events aren't cheap, especially the one that I chose to do, which I will talk about later. That costs a little money, so we had to look at that. Time, not, everyone has busy schedules. Some people, have busy work schedules. A lot of the coworkers that I have also are in school, so when they aren't at work, they're, doing homework and attending school and stuff like that. So that was a little bit of a restraining force. Clashing personalities. I could say that was a little bit of a restraining force. Most of my coworkers are very, friendly, and we get along very well. But, when the tensions are high and you have issues and stuff like that you want to work out, especially in a committee-like setting, sometimes, people can butt heads and it can become an issue. Lack of participation. I was worried at first that would be an issue, but it turns out that a lot of people, like to voice their opinions and their issues. And we ended up having a pretty good turnout to all of our meetings and to our activity that we did end up planning. Resistance to change. Now that's always or most of the time could be restraining force due to, management not being able to implement the change, of course. Administration, you never know if they're gonna, approve something or not approve something. Your co-workers, you don't know if they're gonna be, as accepting of the change. So that was also a restraining force. Driving forces, nursing eager to have their voices heard. Everyone, if you're having issues, or you might just want to speak about it and, try to resolve that. So a lot of people wanted to do that. No committee to focus solely on employees' needs. We did have the relationship-based care committee, which is more of a departmental and patient care-based committee. It didn't really focus on the employees. So that's why I created it as an extension of the RBC committee, because we already did have a committee focusing on quality care, patient needs, departmental issues, stuff like that, but we didn't have an actual committee focused on our employees and their needs. Increased positivity with decreased stress. I noticed throughout, I'll touch on this a little bit later, but throughout the project, I actually noticed there was a little bit more positivity on the unit. There was not as many people leaving, not as many people, hanging their heads, especially me with organizing this committee and, having an outlet for issues and figuring out solutions to these issues that we were having. It provided definitely a positive change. And then support of management staff. My management staff was hugely supportive of this project. They actually attended most of the retention committee meetings that we've had so far, which is amazing, because in most of the meetings that we've had, if we have any issues brought up, we talk about it, brainstorm solutions, and then we actually have a direct line to the management to be able to see what we could possibly do to find a solution to these issues. So those were driving forces. And that was kind of factors that were going for our project, or, pushing it along, giving it. Description of the environment. The description of my environment, I work at Comanche County Memorial Hospital. As a lot of the instructors know, I am, as if you might not be able to tell because I'm here via video, I live in southwest Oklahoma in a town called Lawton. I moved out here almost 2 years ago now, and I work at, like I said, Comanche County Memorial Hospital. It's an acute care facility. It has over 283 licensed beds and employs close to 2,000 staff. On my unit is a 36-bed medical surgical unit. Right now there are 11 registered nurses, 12 licensed practical nurses or LPNs, 12 nurses assistants or CNAs, and 1 unit secretary. We have 1 charge nurse right now, so some of the times we don't have a charge nurse on day shift, and they don't have a night shift charge nurse either. We're also currently employing 8 agency registered nurses that were hired to help assist with our staffing issues that the unit is currently experiencing. Like I said, I lived here for 2 years now almost. I've actually worked at Comanche County Memorial Hospital for close to, in August, that will be 2 years. I have a good working relationship with the management staff on the unit, the charge nurse, and all the other employees of this unit. The environment was selected because I work there. I have good working relationships with management and employees, and I noticed the need for this change. I conducted a needs assessment. I created and distributed it to 20 nurses on our unit with instructions to fill out and return to me, the change agent. The purpose of the assessment was to allow for feedback and determine interest from the nursing staff, see if they wanted to become a part of the retention committee. The results of the assessment provided me with encouragement because it showed that there was a need for this change, and it'll show through the questionnaire. My first question was, do you think 2 South has an issue with nurses resigning from their positions on this unit? And 16 out of the 18 responses that I got, I distributed 20, I got 18 back. And they said 16 said yes, there is an issue. The second question, will you be willing to participate in employee morale boosting team building activity that would take place outside of the hospital? 12 people said yes to that out of the 18, so I was really encouraged by that. If you answered no to the previous question, would you be willing to participate in a morale boosting activity that takes place at the hospital? And 7 said yes to that. So even though some people might for any reason not want to participate in an outside hospital activity, they still might be willing to participate in a activity that takes place actually at the hospital. And then I had, for the next question, 2 lists of activities. One is an in-hospital list and one was an outside hospital list. And the results of that were 8 wanted a stress management and effective communication class. 8 wanted team building exercises. 6 wanted a holiday cook-off. 6 wanted a grill out or a potluck. 6 wanted dinner and movie. 7 wanted an escape room. 4 wanted painting classes, and game night was 8. So I had, a lot of people actually wanted to do various activities, which was awesome to hear about. And then for my last question, would you be willing to serve on a committee? And 13 actually said yes, they would. And I believe 10 of those 13 provided their names, which was great because I could actually reach out to these people. So I reached out to all of the people who provided their names on the surveys, as well as by some word of mouth. The first committee meeting was organized to be held on February 26th after the regular relationship-based care RBC committee concluded. There were 16 members in attendance, and we took a picture at our first meeting. This isn't everyone that attended, but this is a picture of our first meeting. These members in attendance included 1 night shift CNA, 3 night shift LPNs, 1 night shift RN, 4 day shift LPNs, 3 day shift RNs, 2 day shift RNs, and 2 day shift charge RNs, and 1 medical supervisor, 1 associate director. So that was our first meeting. We talked about different things. I, discussed the change project, what I was planning on doing with it, what our goal and objective was, and they agreed on that. We talked about future activities. I went over the needs assessment that I just talked about, and they really liked the escape room activity, so we talked about doing one of those. We decided that we were going to do the escape room activity at the meeting, and that it could not be brought out of the RBC budget. So we talked about funding possibilities, and we ultimately come up with the idea to do a bake sale. So we finalized the plans on that, and we decided to do the escape room. So the bake sale that we organized, there were multiple steps and individuals involved in this process. The committee determined that the date of the bake sale would be April 1st. Once the date was set, I contacted administration and got some permission, as well as organized the time and location. Arrangements were made by me and someone in administration for the bake sale to be held in a conference room that was directly beside the cafeteria. It was actually right beside it on the way into the cafeteria, so I thought it would be a good way to get hungry people to come in. After I made the arrangements, then I talked to committee members, see who wanted to bring baked goods, prices of the baked goods. I created a flyer announcing the bake sale, and I put it in my formal paper I distributed out to most of the units in the hospital. I came in on one of my days off and distributed the flyer to all kinds of units around to spread the word 1 week prior to the bake sale. Everything was really organized, everything was set up, and then the day before we were scheduled to have the bake sale, the Sunday before the Monday we were going to have it, my preceptor called me at work and they said that the associate director had contacted them, and due to some new policies that were being put in place for committees at Comanche County Memorial Hospital, we were unable to do the bake sale the next day due to committees unable to be doing independent fundraising. So it was the associate director had meant to, notify me earlier. So there was a little bit of a hiccup. So me, the preceptor that I had throughout this project, and some of the other committee members got together and kind of brainstormed ideas of what we were going to do, because everyone had already put in time, everyone had already baked their goods. We had one person, actually, if you see in my PowerPoint, she actually handmade labels for each to put on each baked good. So everything had already been set up. So we were kind of, what are we gonna do? That's when we came up with the idea of doing a donation potluck. So since we couldn't actually do an official bake sale, we set up a potluck in our break room, brought all of the baked goods that day, set it up potluck style. We just set everything up. We put a donation box in the center, as you can see right here in the picture I have provided, and encouraged those getting baked goods to donate their funds if they were getting baked goods, since we couldn't technically put prices on anything. Actually, the turnout was really well. We almost had nothing left after the donation potluck. Then me and the committee members counted the donations. After the bake sale, we could kind of determine more of what we were going to do with the escape room activity, because we knew what funding we had available. So we organized for the third week of April, we were going to do escape room activities with 3 different activities to choose from. I held an in-service during the shift huddles prior to the shifts one day, and I talked about the project and the activity that we were doing, the committee. I discussed the benefits of team building and communication skills, and how escape rooms had been shown effective to work on those. I went through the guidelines as well as sign-up instructions. What I did is I did an anonymous sign-up. I had 3 escape rooms to choose from. I had the 3 options up on the huddle board, and I had slips of paper that you could pick which one you went to, pull the slip from the paper, put your name in, and put it down in an anonymous drop box. This encouraged people to not just go with people they normally communicated with. We wanted to encourage people to kind of open up their horizons, communicate with new people, and experience this with maybe people they hadn't interacted with very much. We actually had really good initial sign up for the activity. We ended up with 5 people signing up for one of the activities out of the 8. We had a full room with 6 people, and then the last room we had available, no one signed up for, so I only ended up reserving the 2 rooms for the escape rooms. The first escape room was to be held April 14th. 3 out of the 5 nurses on my unit actually ended up going. This was a mix of day shift charge nurses, night shift nurses, and a night shift aide. So, and they, usually didn't hang out or interact. The other 2 that were gonna go, I think one of them said that they were sleeping in, and the other one forgot about it or something like that, but neither one of them wanted to miss it. It was just a miscommunication, and so they expressed that they would like to do it again. And the 3 that went are in the picture right here. They loved the activity. They said that it was awesome, that it was great communications building activity, and they would love to do it again. The second escape room activity was held on April 17th. 6 people were scheduled to do this activity. Only 5 ended up going. The 6th one was held up at work. She said she could not leave, but she also wanted to do a future event that was like this. She expressed regret about not being able to come. I was actually in that group. It was awesome. It was a really fun way to work on communication and team building skills and not be in the high stress work environment that we are in on a day-to-day basis. It was really refreshing to be able to get outside of the hospital setting with my coworkers and experience something fun. All right, the guidelines for this activity that I set up, it was to be voluntary and by anonymous sign up. I told you about the drop boxes earlier. Funding was not to come from the unit budget, as I had mentioned earlier, and the committee was responsible for providing the funds, which we did through the bake sale. Adults only, no children permitted to attend. We thought maybe in future activities like potlucks or grill outs or something like that, that might be more of a family activity, but escape rooms aren't more for children just due to the critical thinking that's involved, and we want it to be more about just our coworkers. To South only, no employees from other units were permitted to attend. We might branch out in the future, but right now, especially when we're so new to doing these activities, we wanted to focus on our unit. Employees were to wear street clothes only, no CCMH attire, name badges, stethoscopes, etc. When we also said that CCMH was not responsible for any actions or activities that took place outside of the hospital by the employees. So that kind of just covered Comanche County. Anything can happen. We didn't want to hold them responsible for anything because this is an outside activity. And so, yeah. Go live dates. We talked about the first retention committee meeting was February 26th. The bake sale was April 1st. My in-service to discuss this escape room activity with my fellow coworkers. There's a picture right here. It was April 11th. The first escape room activity, as I mentioned, was April 14th, and the second was April 17th. What worked well and what did not work well? What worked well? Staff was excited for the creation of the committee and for planning future activities. I got really great feedback when I was passing out my needs assessment. A lot of people were really interested in what I was doing, and when I was telling them about my idea, they really enjoyed it. Staff were able to raise money for event planning through our bake sale or donation potluck. We were actually able to raise a good amount of money for the events. And a new policy, like I said earlier, the reason why we couldn't technically have the bake sale was because due to new policies, we're not allowed to independently fundraise because we are getting a budget. So now we're not going to have an issue with funds or anything like that because we will have a budget. Staff and other departments voiced positive opinions of creation committee and committee events. Many nurses attended the meetings and signed up for escape room activity. I told you earlier our first meeting had 16 nurses attending, or nursing staff attending, and we had 6 come to one room and or 6 sign up for one room and 5 sign up for the other room. What didn't work well? Some difficulties with scheduling meetings and getting everyone to attend. A lot of people around this time especially had a lot of trips they were going on with their families. Some people were getting sick. We had to reschedule. I know I went on a trip throughout this process and had to reschedule some things. So communication was very much key. Staying in communication via text and email and stuff like that. And just trying to get as many people to come to the meetings as possible. And then last minute difficulties, as I mentioned, with the bake sale, approval by administration due to the new budgeting policies. So we ended up setting up the potluck style and accepted donations instead. So that was my my project. It was very enlightening, to say the least. It was a amazing experience. I learned so much about the processes of what it takes to make a change. It's definitely not for the lighthearted. There's a lot of hardships, a lot of hindrances during the process, but seeing the improvement that you can make in such a short amount of time is very, very rewarding. And you know, I can't wait to see where this project goes, because I will definitely be continuing the retention committee, and I will, you know, evaluate here in a few months and see where we are and plan for future events. And I hope you enjoyed my presentation. To end, I you know, did a quote: "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed people can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has." So I'm going to leave you with that quote. It's very powerful, and I looked at it multiple times throughout this for motivation and inspiration throughout this process. Thank you so much for listening to my presentation, and I hope you guys have a wonderful evening.